Greetings and salutations, my beautiful people, and welcome back to
Caddy's Retrospectives!
And now we've air juggled our way into part 2 of the Tekken.
Caddy's Retrospectives!
And no, Spyro will wait. I mean it. But anyway, let's get on with Tekken. And I'm gonna have a lot to say here because now we're coming up to one of my favourite PS1 games of all time. So let's just stop fucking stalling and let's just get on with the legendary Tekken 2.
So, Tekken had decided to be all clever and revolutionise 3D fighting games forever along with Sega's Virtua Fighter. And also, it delivered an incredible feat of retailing accomplishment by being the first PlayStation game ever to sell over 1 million units, and according to the 2008 Gamer Edition Book of the Guinness Book of World Records book, it was also the first fighting game to feature simulated 3D. Pretty impressive, Namco. And like I said in the last episode of this mini-retrospective, despite the impact and the reforming of 3D fighters that the game had at the time, I think that, unfortunately, it is not one that has stood the test of time. And when anyone on planet Earth decides to pop in this game's sequel, you can completely understand why I think that. In the arcades of North America, Tekken 2 was released a mere 11 months after the first Tekken reached arcade cabinets internationally. And the drastic perfectionist increase in everything that the first one tried is absolutely astonishing. Not to mention the initial first arcade version A of this game in Japan was finished only 8 months after the previous, and Namco had learned and adopted so much in that time slot, I'm honestly gobsmacked. Well, am I really? Like, really? I mean, this is kind of like the Crash Bandicoot effect because, you know, Naughty Dog were churning out superior sequels faster than people could take a shit!
I'm not even joking around when I say that Tekken 2 is one of the greatest video game sequels I have ever played. And no, that's got nothing to do with the fact that it was the first fighter I ever played as a child. Not at all. And once I actually start talking about it, everyone will understand why I think that this makes Tekken 1 pale in comparison. Because after playing Tekken 2 first and going down to Tekken 1, the difference in quality and everything else is just... But anyway, we're going to find out a little bit more about that later, so let's just get on because the story must be lectured.
So, in continuation from the last game, Kazuya had extracted his own revenge by performing the same fate upon his father by throwing Heihachi down a cliff, to which Kazuya also performed the weirdest satisfactory glare in video game history. And obviously, depending on whom you also beat the game as, all the other fighters, including the unlockable ones, all received $1 billion and lived happily ever after. What's funny is the way that all the characters are really fighting for the same thing, so even though there are tons of alternate endings to the whole saga, to who the money goes to and what they do with it, there's always that constant underlining plot of the Mishima family feuds that are even good enough for their own fucking sitcom. Anyway, now Kazuya has become more corrupt and powerful than he ever was in his life, and the raging devil inside of him is slowly eating away at his soul. Because of this, Kazuya is now engaging in many illegal activities, including kidnapping and extreme animal testing on endangered species, including fucking dinosaurs and even a boxing kangaroo! And because of this, an animal rights activist and operative named Jun Kazuma is sent to arrest Kazuya for these very experiments, and at the same time, Heihachi actually climbs back up the cliff that Kazuya dropped him off at the end of the first and seeks for complete and utter domination. Also, it just so happens that Kazuya desires to completely wipe out all of his competition and enemies, and so announces the King of the Iron Fist tournament too, with now a rewarding sum of $1 trillion, which he knows will definitely attract every single fighter imaginable for him to wipe out, including his nuisance father. And then the same old stuff that you can imagine then unfolds, except now Heihachi is your replacement beginning character over Kazuya.
And yes, where I do admit that the Mishima plot in the Tekken series is a little bit silly. Okay, actually, really fucking silly. After all, critics don't usually tend to look at the plot of a fighting game first off, and the critical response for this game is fucking insane. So the real main question is, what exactly did this game expand on and improve just generally on the foundations after the first Tekken game? Well, why am I asking you? That's why I make this video, ain't it?
So anyway, I actually did include this game in my top 20 PS1 games of all time, so you can watch that back by clicking here if you wanted a much shorter version of everything that I'm going to blab about. Tekken 2 was, like Crash 2 and MGS 2, a great big ballsy sequel. Everything and anything that could be improved was improved, and improved dramatically. And not just the badass announcer.
Round 1. Fight. Round 1. Fight.
First off, the immediate difference was the refining on the graphics. The infinitely panning backdrops were still the same kind of 2D pre-rendered styles, but yet they were more vibrant and more detailed. The character models were finer, crisper, and less blockier and less hilarious. I mean, the difference with Kuma kind of says it all, don't you think? Oh, and Law's voice is hilarious anyway. And not only did these characters and settings look better, but there were more of them for everyone! There were an additional 7 characters added to the game, and each and every one had their own unique background and dedicated song from the soundtrack. Talking about backgrounds, when knocked down, players could now roll into and out of the environment in order to avoid downed attacks. And Namco had also started toying around with sidestepping into and out of these backgrounds, which was only available for 3 characters to be fair, but still, it was a fresh thing to see. Also, talking about more characters and unlockables, from what I started saying in the first game, there were some tip-top secret characters to unlock by needs of even more cryptically bullshit fighting requirements, and one very famous one is as follows.
Fun fact. Did you know that when playing the arcade mode of this game, when you get to stage 3, make sure you beat the stage on a finish, meaning that you beat the stage with very little health remaining. On stage 4, Alex or Roger will then appear, and by beating them, they then become playable characters. Now, how is a kid in 1996 supposed to figure that shit out?
Moving on, not only were there more pretty visuals, awesome music and playable characters, but this also meant more combos. And oh goodness, the combos and dedicated grabs and fighting styles were flipping redonky dick. The controls were tighter, more responsive and hugely fluent, which benefited the true challenge and prevented the cheap difficulty from the first game, and there was so much to learn and experiment with that Namco had the ingenious idea to add in a combo list for every character. And holy hell, that made things a lot easier. Although, nowadays, I don't actually have to use it because I know all of them! The only things that I'm not 100% with, though, are the secret moves that aren't in the combo list, such as the oh my god, I fucking love it, and, which wasn't in the last game, the added in 10-hit combos. You thought air juggling was skillful? Well, take a look at this shit. Aren't these the coolest fucking things you've ever seen? Anyway, as a kid as well, I often found myself pretty scared by this game. Don't laugh at me because my good friend Scarfulu actually knows exactly what I'm talking about when I say that. There's something dark and ominous about some of these characters and stages in the game, and the fact that I wasn't the best at this game for a while really struck me frightened. Nearly every stage I went into made me feel completely helpless and threatened within an inch of my life, and sometimes that stress would get too much for me. I knew that I was going to lose, and the fact that I would lose to a lifeless giant robot on top of a darkened cityscape, or go up against a jaguar-faced wrestler in a blackened and endlessly creepy mansion with this soundtrack blaring at me in the face, was almost too much for me as a kid. It's a very difficult childhood fear to explain, but now it doesn't bother me at all because I'm a fucking man. And also, just to take note, it's worth saying that not only were the visuals tweaked, but the fluency of the animation with all the characters was near perfect, and the awkward stiffness of the original had been completely ironed out. Your characters even had the abilities to charge at running speeds and carry on with combos and grabs after tackling opponents and pinning them to the ground, which was kind of tickled with in Tekken 1, but it didn't work so good. Oh, and going on from that, there were even a few supercharged attacks that took a second or two to execute, but goddamn, if you could smack your enemy luckily enough with one, or even win a match with them, then literally you will kill yourself out of awesome. Yeah, it's a common problem, really.
Oh god, so much praise, so many things to talk about. I think I'm going slightly mad.
Oh yeah, going on the subject of talking about more, Tekken 2 also is one of the few rare exceptions of life where the PlayStation port of the arcade classic is actually considered, critically and fan-wide, far superior. Not only were there special optional music tracks remixed especially for the console port, like in Tekken 1, which, by the way, if you don't mind the saying, I find actually much better, and the uniquely special and slightly disturbing FMV ending clips were available as rewards for your hard work, but there were also many more additional battle modes and optional gameplay styles. Unseasoned newcomers or practiced veterans could enter practice mode and go up against any target dummy that they wanted, as well as choosing how the AI would behave and seeing their button presses entered as they perform combos to enhance and hone their skills. Because as you can see, that's what I like doing! There was a survival mode added, which acted as a true test of players' skills by going up against a gargantuan stream of enemies and stages on one life, with occasional spurts of health after every win. Actually, I think it's an endless amount of enemies. Who knows?
Because you're not good enough to find out, Sonny Jim.
There was a time attack mode which allowed players to test not only their consistency of survival, but the speed of which they finished arcade mode. And even though the versus mode was there, we never actually used it. Purely because as a kid, if I was ever going to have a two-player battle with someone, I would always boot up arcade mode just so that when player 2 hit start, we'd hear this. Ooh, I feel 7 again! And alongside the traditional versus mode, there was also the favourite series staple known as Team Battle mode, where 2 players could pick anywhere up to 8 characters to duke it out with each other. And this little Team Battle mode is the sole reason for the years of my childhood life wasted with friends and even family by just constantly playing it. It's indescribably fun, I must say.
And all of you out there that have played this before know exactly what I'm talking about. I got a message. And you'll also know what I'm talking about when I say these 3 words. Kazuya and Devil.
My god, I said earlier that this game scared my childhood self, and these 2 were probably the main culprits for that internal fear. The challenge from Heihachi in Tekken 1 was present, but Kazuya now seems so much more threatening in his own pitch-black mansion and his own badass soundtrack. And he may have been a bit slower and less cheap than Heihachi in Tekken 1, but he made up for that in raw power, and even sometimes the brains, with AI that was completely tuned to perfection with guarding and counterattacks. He was a true challenge right from the second you lay eyes on him, but when you beat him, you are not done yet. And that's because Devil happens. Laserface, flight with demonic wings, infinite mirrors, twisted and alien cries of pure anger from his mind and soul being zombified by the devil gene, tortured, deep and emotionally driven music. This guy will always be my #1 final fight in any fighting franchise. Well, Azazel was pretty fucking insane, that's a given. But yeah, learning how Devil worked was something of an art. And never has beating a character in a fighting game, in my opinion, been that fulfilling, and it's something that wasn't matched for me maybe even until Inferno from Soul Calibur 2. Wait, why am I even explaining this? Look at him! Fucking Laserface!
So, does Tekken 2 hold up today? Yes. I'm even playing it right now.
Basically, to sum up, there's a definite reason as to why this game is in my top 20 PS1 games of all time. It rounded off and vastly improved everything that the first one did and offered players so much more content, gameplay modes and styles, multiplayer modes, characters, optional yet easily accessible and adaptable practice modes, combos, prettier visuals, better music, incredible control, and for less than a year's worth of work, it's something that is completely and utterly simply indescribable. And it's also something that I've noticed a lot with early PlayStation sequels and the leap in quality from their predecessors. This may be all well and good, but the real question is it possible that Namco could tackle and achieve a hat trick? And what else could they possibly do from here on out, if at all?